Let's look at the following simple Python code. So, in lines 1 and 2, we are printing out to a user, "Please enter a number," and storing it in a variable. In line 3, we are adding these two variables together and storing the answer in a variable called result. In line 4, we are printing out the answer. Let's assume that we enter the numbers 3 and 3. You'd expect the answer to be 6, right? Because that's what 3 plus 3 is. But no, it will give us 33. What's going on? Well, every input from the console is treated as words, the string data type. If you add words together, you get a sentence. If you add sentences together, you get paragraphs. So when we add 3 and 3 together, we are actually adding the string 3 and the string 3, which is why we got 33. If we want our input to be used as numbers, we need to tell our program to treat the input as if they were numbers by converting them to numbers. This process of converting a variable from one data type to another is called casting. It's not just when getting input from the console that we need to cast our data though. For example, let's look at the following Python code. Here on line 1 and 2, we have created two integer variables storing the integer numbers 10 and 20. We have then on line 3 added them together. As they're integers, they will actually add this time. Finally, on line 4 we have outputted a message with the string, the result is, and then the result of the addition. This code on line 4 has triggered an error called a type error. You see, as the warning says, you can only concatenate a string to a string. Concatenate means to stick two strings together to make a single string. We'll learn more about this in a future lesson. We, however, have tried to concatenate an integer to a string. This cannot be done. We must first cast our integer variable result into a string. To carry out casting, we need to use the casting functions of our language. A function is a piece of code that does a specific job. We will look at functions in a later lesson. In Python, you need to know the following casting functions. Int turns everything between the brackets into a whole number. Float turns everything between the brackets into a floating point number. str turns everything between the brackets into a string. Let's say we wanted to carry out the first code example from earlier this lesson for adding 3 and 3 from user input. We could code that as follows. You can see that we have wrapped our input statement in our int casting function. This means that whatever the user enters will be stored as an integer. This means that first v and second v will be integer variables, and so the addition will work as expected. The process of performing your own casting is called explicit casting. In most programming languages, you are required to do all of your casting yourself. Python, however, in one special case, will do the conversion for you. Let's say you have carried out the code we saw previously for entering two numbers, adding them together and printing out the answer. Now let's assume you've changed the maths from adding to dividing. We will get the output of 1.0, which is a float data type. Whenever you perform an arithmetic division on int data types, Python will always assume that the result of the calculation will be a float and will display the output as such. You don't have to cast the output to float, it is done for you. The process of casting data types for you without any programming is called implicit casting. So, all console input in Python and most other languages are strings. If you want to deal with your input in any other data type, you need to convert it. The process of converting a variable from one data type to another is called casting. When you have to write your own casting code, this is called explicit casting. When the casting is done for you, it is called implicit casting. In Python, if you ever divide two integers, the program will implicitly cast the result to a float.